There. We are now on the broadcast.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We are finally getting ready to start.
Okay, so I did do my audio test before we started, Brian. I don't know if you did yours.
I should probably do a quick sound check. Doing a quick sound check. This is about the loudest I'll be speaking. That looks good.
So you up to anything, Brian? Any projects?
I'm always up to projects.
Yeah, you are, aren't you?
Does playing Pokemon Go still count as a project? Augmented reality experimentation? I'm level 37.
I don't think it does.
Dang it. No, I got something else going on. I can't. What did I just tell you about?
You mentioned you were writing for somebody.
Oh, right. So there was a video on YouTube here by Justin Adkin, known as the Thought Emporium, formerly known as the Chem Life. And if you search for any of those things, you'll come up with the guy. He just produced a video about growing your own fungus. And I was going to write this up for Hackaday, and I thought, oh yeah, this will be interesting. I'll take some notes. And it's a 40-minute video, which is longer than I usually like to do. And I became so engrossed with it. Like, between watching a 40-minute video and taking notes on it, it took me about an hour and a half, and I loved it. I was super impressed by how entertaining it was. Imagine taking an entire semester course in college of fungus, but instead of getting through all the nitty-gritty, you just pull out the fun parts and compress it into a 40-minute lecture. That's what this was. And so if you're like, fungus, whatever, I don't really care, watch this video, at least watch 10 minutes of it. And if you don't decide to watch after that, you'll know in the first 10 minutes if you're going to enjoy it or not. And I totally did. So I wrote up that as a Hackaday article. And the commenters on that were like, yeah, this is pretty not new information, which means it's the tried and true stuff. So it may not be innovative, but it is an entertaining way to get your feet wet with fungus and at least have some kind of an opinion on it. So I was super impressed by that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've considered growing specific types of fungus, but never gotten around to it.
I would do kombucha.
I haven't done kombucha, but I have done SCOBY. I've done kefir quite a bit for years, actually.
Oh, cool.
And I think we actually just got rid of it, but we may start it again.
Yeah, they're surprisingly interesting. I always thought of fungus as like, oh yeah, I left spaghetti sauce out too long and now it's green. Bummer.
Yeah. Kefir isn't actually a fungus, though. It's a SCOBY, so it's bacteria and yeast colony that work together.
Yeast is fungus.
Yeast is yeast technically a fungus?
I thought so.
I thought that fungus was like an evolution of yeast. Okay. I thought that they were classified. I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting stuff, though. So, yeah, nothing new with me, man. It's all the same stuff. I had something exciting to report. All right, so are we ready to start recording? Do we have anybody on? I don't think we do. Yeah, we have one viewer.
Oh, cool. Hello.
Hi. Ooh. All right, so are you ready to record?
Yeah, count us down.
All right, let me get my document up just to make sure there we go. Oh, there we go. All right, 1, 2, 3, go. Hello and welcome. My name's Tim Shank.
And I'm Brian McAvoy. This is 2 Cyborgs and a Microphone, brought to you by Dangerous Things, custom gadgetry for the discerning biohacker. Find cutting-edge implantable technology and the equipment to support it. Tim and I both have implants from Dangerous Things, like the XNT NFC tags, which Tim uses to open his front door, and I pass contact information without paper or misspelling because, you know, my name. All right, today we're talking about... Excuse me. Today we're starting the Cyborg Book Club. Back in the days of Twin Cities Plus, when this show first started, we did a book club in real life, and I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed getting together and just talking about some nerdy literature. And so we're going to try and bring that to you guys.
So for the first installment of our book club, we're reviewing. So for the first installment of our book club, we're reviewing The Quantum Magician by We're reviewing The Quantum Magician by Derek Koonskin.
You
It's
got
an
the name right.
I did get the name right, and it has one of those funny marks on the U. But anyway, it's a good book. I thought it was really interesting. The focus of the book is it's more of a kind of caper type book, but it has a lot to do with genetic engineering, which is very interesting to me.
Oh, me as well. Yeah, I did enjoy the caper, as you called it, of the book, and that's really where it gets into the meat of what happens in the book. Uh, Tim, are we going to do spoilers for this book?
I don't think we really need to.
Okay.
I don't think we need to.
I will try to keep my mouth zipped. And
Okay. Well, there may be spoilers.
I say, if you're offended by spoilers, don't listen to the live broadcast. We'll try to trim all the spoilers out of the audio only version.
So for me, I think we can do this without spoilers if we talk about the concepts rather than the actual story, which is story is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
The basics of the story, and I think we can just sum it up, is that there's a new technology that was developed, and by a faction of that society, and they need to get it across some borders, and there's a caper to do it.
Right.
So let's talk about the genetic engineering, because there was 3 basic races other than a stock human that they refer to, but we don't really talk much about. So the main character, he's Homo quantus is how they do it. And what this is, they're 10 and what the Homo quantus are is that they're genetically engineered humans that have some biological enhancements and a specific brain structure of their brain that allows them to turn off their personality to basically induce temporary brain damage so that they can and basically introduce temporary brain damage so that they can actually enter a state of thinking that's more like a quantum computer, right?
Right. Yeah, they will not collapse potential waveforms because they're not their personality, which is, according to the book, what collapses the potential, is erased. It's gone. There is no person. And what I found really interesting is that the author writes while they're in this state. Like it would be a first person perspective, but there's no person. The character refers to themselves as
the objectivity.
The objectivity of main character's name. What was the main character's name?
Oh, I should remember that.
Right, we both should.
It was a complicated name, and then they shortened it all the time to
Belisario.
Belisario, right?
the objectivity Belisario, corporeal being was in grave danger or something. And it really reminded me of The Watchmen, when you're behind the eyes of Dr. Manhattan as he's on Mars and he can see past, present, and future all simultaneously. And it's trying to describe that. It was a trip. I thought it was well done.
Yeah.
I was impressed by that.
I listened to the audiobook. I don't read actually, except for reference. So the way the narrator did it, and I used the audiobook. I don't know who the narrator was offhand, but just the way he read those passages of where he kind of switched, he changed his cadence and his tone to be very monotonous, and it really helped you get the idea of what it's like to lose your personality, to completely lose that part of your thinking, and it's interesting. One of the things that interested me, I mean, I don't know how much detail I'm going to go into when I start to say this, but there are certain substances that take you to a very similar place in this, and it actually makes me wonder if those substances are a way to break your brain in this way, in the way that's described in this book. It's very similar. It's really interesting when you talk about, well, I'll just say it, DMT, which is a psychedelic. It's completely harmless. But it maybe does do just exactly what's happening in this book. Hard to
Maybe
say.
that was the author's. Maybe that was the author's inspiration. Who knows?
It could be, but the way it was described was really interesting, and and there was actually multiple states of this. So there was, what did they call them, Brian? There was
So there was just regular human interfacing, like your regular person, nobody can tell the difference. Then they had what they called savant,
right,
where a good chunk of their personality, they have no ability to read people's innuendos. If somebody, they can't make eye contact. And I think that one might have been based on autism.
yeah, that's what it sounded like.
And the author again writes what it's like to be in that state from somebody who's coming from the state of somebody without. And that was also very interesting in its own regard.
And one thing that's interesting, and something I've never tried, is they use transmagnetic stimulation, TMS, and they can actually induce an autistic state in people now. And they've been able to do that for years, and they've done some experiments about how your artistic ability changes and things like that. But it kind of, it kind of brings me to that and makes me want to try that again, because I haven't thought about that for quite a while since I first read about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would try it.
Yeah, I would too. It's it's a temporary thing, so it just kind of shuts down those parts of your brain for a short amount of time.
Yeah, I think that would help a lot with just kind of being able to sympathize and empathize with somebody who can't change that.
Yeah. Well, I've done actually a lot of work with people with autism, actually. A long time.
Right.
But, yeah, so it is interesting to think about that, and how, and actually, to give us an idea of how we might be able to get to that sort of thinking and change our brain chemistry, not our brain chemistry, our brain function, by temporarily doing brain damage in a way, like the TMS, that is temporary brain damage is what it does from one perspective. And it kind of opens up some ideas that maybe we can get to altered states that are temporary but still valuable in how we learn and how we do. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. But I thought it was interesting the way the author described like how the characters did this, because they didn't just flip a magic switch on their shirt collar and go into this state. They had electroplaques as part of their physiology, and that was genetically bred into them or modified so that they had these naturally occurring electroplaques, and they would have the fine control that they could induce a current through their brain and temporarily shut down part of it. And like you said, the temporary brain damage where a part of the brain did not work. And I thought it was interesting that the author took the time to go into that level of detail and suss out and say, okay, this is what I want to happen, and this is the mechanism. I like it when authors describe the mechanism for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. And they even went further into what sounded like some kind of nanoparticles that they could interface with computers through their fingertips, and some other things like that too, which they didn't go into too much depth, just as it applied to the story.
Right.
But
yeah, they didn't give a full chapter rundown of gene sequences and stuff. It was like, okay, this is a good story. Here's one potential way it could work, but it would have taken years and years to even get that close to usable. And they do mention that the Homo quantus were 10 generations in by the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there were 10. I think he was 10th generation, wasn't he?
Yeah, I thought he was. Yeah, anyway.
It doesn't matter.
He wasn't just like, oh, yeah, we made a test baby who's, got superpowers. Cool. There was a long road to get there, which I appreciated. So you thought, Tim, that this book was not real high on the you thought it wasn't real hard on the soft to hard sci-fi scale, right?
No, I wouldn't say it is extent. No, I wouldn't say it is. Not. Some of the books that I've listened to, they're just so deep into it that it's hard to even follow. And I call those, I term those the hard sci-fi. This one's kind of in the middle of the road somewhere.
Yeah, I'd say at the very low end you get things like Star Wars, which is not even sci-fi; it's fantasy.
Right. Yeah. They don't even bother to explain any of the technology in
Right.
Star Wars. You know,
You have magic space knights protecting a princess. It's
right.
a fantasy. Anyway, that's a different rant. So I would put this at about the same level as The Expanse, if you've ever watched that, where there's not a whole lot of super duper like, oh, we have super weapons that will destroy a star or a planet because we said so. There, I appreciate this show because what they'll do is they're like, oh, we are getting into a fight. This ship has, armaments and a railgun. We don't have magical deflector shields. We can't just charge them up and pull energy from the engines to the aft shields. In the show, they will evacuate all the air out of the ship because if they get shot, it's going to puncture the hull. And they just have to cross their fingers that it doesn't hit a crew member. That's it. There's like, oh yeah, we have the technology. Like,
That's interesting. My wife watches The Expanse. I don't think I've done it, and I've been wanting to catch up with her on that. So now I'm really interested in it.
I like it. I like it. It's not one of my guilty pleasures. It's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I like this show, and I will say it out loud.
All right.
So that's where I would put this book, is about on that level.
Okay, so let's talk. I mean, there's another race, but I thought this one was interesting and probably, more likely to occur in our future than the Homo quantus race. I guess we'll call them races because they're all humans. They're subspecies. I guess subspecies.
Right.
So there's Homo eridnus,
Yep.
which were bred specifically for very harsh conditions.
Yep.
And done out of fear, and they did it to make these people very safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So their backstory is their planet was utterly borked. And so the geneticists said, well, the only way we're going to survive on this planet is if we are able to live in the ocean very, very deep and just be tough as nails. And so they went ahead and did these modifications so that their children could continue living on this planet. But they were so far removed from looking like humans and acting like humans and anything else that they were kind of reviled by the rest of humanity.
Yeah,
they were very interesting characters.
Yeah, they were basically in the story. They're basically fish with human brains, is what it turned out to be. Well, they did still have the plaques and some of the other modifications. Mm-hmm. They're basically sea creatures, deep sea creatures. They were the amount of pressure that they were designed for and that they had to have was some insane amount, like 500 atmospheres or something like that.
Right.
Gravity times 500 is what they needed. So the amount of pressure they can withstand and actually required was huge. So they had a very limited amount of things that they could do, and they can't come out of the water. They can't even come up to shallow depths of the water. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty interesting, and that to me sounds like something that may be in the cards for us when we get to this sort of thing. That there would be a desire to have a version of humans that can operate in very extreme conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not on the sea, but there's other things too.
Oh yeah. I mean, the term cyborg was originally intended, I think, for some kind of space-faring human being. And they're like, and I can't remember the exact etymology and reason. Well, I know the etymology of cyborg, but the first time it was used, it was something about like creating a human being capable of sustains zero atmosphere or something. So
that's similar, and it was good the way that this author wrote about them and really thought through what the mind state of somebody who was in that subspecies would be.
Mm-hmm.
Because they hated everybody in general.
And incredibly vulgar.
Oh yeah, incredibly vulgar, and what was their
they called themselves the race of the mongrel.
Yeah, race of the mongrel, and what was it? Piss on everybody, bite every hand, piss on everybody, lick your balls if you can find
Yes. Oh my! It wasn't just a lot of f-bombs and swear words. It was some pretty sailory talk.
Oh yeah, that's yeah.
Mhm.
It was an interesting concept that this race was entirely disenfranchised and really had no respect for anybody
Mm.
because of how they were created, how they couldn't reproduce because of what they were, and just the mindset of a creature that would be that. It's
Mhm.
interesting. It was pretty good. Pretty well done. And it didn't go very deep into that sort of society. There's another one we'll talk about here in a minute that they went really deep. They didn't go deep into things like social structures and society, societal issues of most of these races. The Homo quantus, yes, a little bit. The other one that we'll talk about shortly, yes, but
Maybe too much.
yeah.
On number 3, we'll get into that a little. You for
So
those listening, you kind of want to discover these creatures for yourself.
yeah, and the implants that they talked about are really interesting to me. That's one of the things that really interests me is the way they interface with computers and the plaques and things like that. I think that stuff's really interesting, and some of it's maybe viable if the ideas were fleshed out more and a lot of experiments.
Yeah, no, some of those were really neat too. Very, very like, how close are we to building something like that, or even just the human interfaces?
Yeah, well,
Also,
it's interesting you bring that up because VivoKey is one of our sponsors. They're a platform for digital identity, authentication, cryptography, and payment applications secured by implantable and subdermal NFC devices. So Brian and I are both part of the beta on this. Have you gotten yours yet, Brian?
I haven't gotten mine.
Have you ordered it yet?
I haven't ordered it yet.
Brian,
I'm sorry.
I haven't got mine yet either. I've had mine on order for a bit. But I'm excited to get my flags.
Yeah, me too.
It's going to be really exciting. Can't wait.
That'll be a neat step. That'll be a neat step into interfacing with computers, which, hey, I'm all about that.
Absolutely.
I know what a computer is.
Yeah. And while we're talking, I want to really thank our patron supporters. Every dollar we get from our patron supporters, and there's a number of them now, so thank you so much. It really helps us to fund our podcast, to reach out to new people.
Thank you. Yeah, we love you.
So
let's talk about the third race.
The puppets and the Newman. Man,
oh my gosh. Okay, so this book is not a horror book, but these guys are.
Yeah. So the whole concept of the puppets and Newman is there was some seedy parts of the society that decided to do their own genetic engineering. They separated themselves from society, and they genetically engineered some servants.
Servants is an understatement. They not only designed slaves, they designed slaves who would literally worship them.
And then they genetically engineered their own race, themselves. So they genetically engineered themselves to emit pheromones that are specific for these creatures. And these creatures then, when exposed to those pheromones, they feel like they're in the presence of God. It's divinity. And so in the beginning, and they don't really tell this story fully. I mean, it could be a story in itself, actually. I'd like to
easily.
I'm reading that.
I would. Oh God, they were so disturbing.
Well, it was disturbing where it got to. It would be less disturbing to see how it grew up to that, I think.
Fair.
Because what ended up happening is they developed this race of slaves that worshiped them.
And they were about half the height of a standard human.
Yeah, they're little people.
They called them puppets.
Puppets. And these creatures worshipped them, but eventually, because a divine presence is not a person, they ended up not revolting, but taking control of that, right?
Mhm.
So they caged the Newmen, which were the master race in this thing,
Mhm.
and they learned to worship them in captivity.
Yeah, they took away the will of the Newman. They're like, oh, these gods can hurt themselves, and we need them. We cannot live without them. We will go insane without them. So we have to keep them from hurting themselves. And it became in essence, it became a revolt because the Newmen were then enslaved by their creations.
Yeah, and it was
Very poetic.
poetic and really perverse in the way
Oh,
that
yeah.
it described. I mean, the puppets, they were ecstatic to receive any attention, whether
Any.
it's abuse, whether it's and it's really perverse, and how much they could, how subservient they were, and how much they enjoyed even the most unpleasant of interactions. I guess I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So it is disturbing to read. It was
I will say it was largely non-sexual.
what was on that border though?
Oh, it was towing that line, but it didn't turn into some weird kinky novel.
No,
So despite what we're saying, it didn't go that route, which I think added to the just peculiarity of it. Like, it would have been way too easy to be like, uh, try to shock the reader with gratuitous sex acts in this case. And the author didn't go that way, and I respect that.
no, but he did present the interactions in a borderline sexual way, which is kind of how it, I mean, even the simplest things, the simplest touches and things like that to the puppets, they were very, I guess, erotic. Is the term.
Intimate. Yeah. Yeah.
But it wasn't sex. So
No.
that was interesting. It did. There was a lot of description of that. But
Just, I would say, just the right amount.
yeah,
So no, I think that was done well, and it was done in a way that still kind of creeps me out.
yeah. It was definitely perverse. That's the term I'd use.
Mhm.
So, in the end, we won't do any spoilers, but there are some twists and turns in the book, and it is a very interesting book to read. Fun.
Yes, I was entertained.
At first, I was a little concerned there was Ocean's 11 with mutants, but it wasn't. Turned out to be very different than that.
I don't know. I mean, I really liked Ocean's 11, and the part of this that was the caper, like you call it, it was good. It was like the author was like, okay, I want to have this caper. I want to have this heist. Basically, it's not actually a heist.
There is a heist in there, but we didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
There is a heist. So there's a twist right there. There's a caper and a heist.
Oh, goodness. But he was like, okay, so there's going to be a caper heist. And rather than just playing by the rules, he's like, I'm going to set up my own world for this. And it still doesn't go exactly where you expect.
Yeah.
So
very interesting book.
Good book. Good perspective on genetics and potential and pitfalls of humanity.
Yeah, and especially now when we have this whole thing where he's Jiankui, I think. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. With the scientists in Shenzhen.
Chinese genetic.
Yeah. I think he's technically a physicist, but he just did his own, he just went for it. Genetic engineering, and it's definitely premature.
Definitely.
But, yeah, it's timely that we talk about this now.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see where this whole thing goes. I mean, you said you think you know where it's going to go if the genetic edits that were done were truly done.
Yeah.
That I've read about.
Yeah. So for those of you who are not familiar with this guy, he set out to genetically modify some humans to be resistant to HIV. And I don't think we're ready for this level of we're not ready for genetically modifying humans yet. Not because we don't have technology that can potentially do it, but because we haven't figured out exactly what we're going to do wrong, because we're going to do stuff wrong. And until we know some of that, burdening an unborn human with that is too soon.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's easy to think of the fetuses and the embryos as being something you can modify, but what about 20 years later? We don't know that. That's the thing, that we don't have any way to understand what the actual effect of this stuff is going to be. I mean, these two twins, if they were genetically modified, they're probably going to die.
I think so.
Die early.
I think that's very likely. And
Absolutely.
I think that's what makes it unfair. You know, if there were,
even if it wasn't, though, man, what, I mean, now 15, 20 years down the line, they're a different race. I mean, they're truly not human anymore. That's,
I think they'd be human. They might not be Homo sapiens. They might be, you know, because we're Homo sapiens sapiens. You know, maybe they're going to be Homo sapiens something else.
right. But we just don't know. I mean, and that's the thing is, and then when you start reproducing, then it just, I mean, we're just not, I mean, we're not capable. We're not capable of understanding the real impact of stuff like this.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Give us 20 years, if one of these girls lives, we might be more and have a little more perspective.
Yeah. And we're at the beginning of this journey. Hey, if these girls, one of these girls lives to graduate from high school, it's going to be a different perspective, and I'll have to change my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's really no way to know, and it's done now. So
yeah,
I guess we'll find out, right?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm a betting man. If I had to wager, I would bet that they will not live long enough to graduate high school. And I would be very, very happy to lose that bet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's we'll see. We'll see what happens here. And one thing that I doubt if this is the first time that this has happened. This is just the first time that it's happened that we know about.
That could be true.
And this guy, I need to learn how to pronounce his last name. He's disappeared now.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I wonder is if the government snapped him up and is allowing him to continue his work in a more protected environment.
Could be. I mean, he could be producing super athletes for the Olympics. Don't know.
You know, the East has always been very open to enhancement. I mean, that's their, and I think I forget who it was, the leader of China, somebody who was a leader of China, high up. They said that they won't hesitate to enhance people to make it so that their public their population is superior.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the difference in between the Western and Eastern thought.
Maybe
Eastern thought is very open to enhancement, very, very open to it.
They'll probably beat us.
Oh yeah, for sure. We're too uptight, right?
For the most part, that's true.
Yeah. So, I guess that's it, isn't it? Right,
yeah. Do we have any questions from the YouTube audience? I know we're broadcasting a little earlier than usual, so if y'all aren't awake yet, it's Sunday morning where Tim and I are. So if you're not awake yet, we'll assume that's why you're not here. Give a moment. Otherwise, if you have anything, just shout it out real quick. We're gonna do our exit stuff while you type, and we'll keep the show going.
All right.
So, thank you for listening. We'd like to invite our listeners to email us at cyborgs@2cyborgs.com. You can also shoot either Tim or I an email, tim@2cyborgs.com or brian@2cyborgs.com.
2Cyborgs is also sponsored by Blockpool, real-world blockchain solutions for business. Using BIT, a custom API interface to interact with legacy applications and databases, Blockpool enables a level of integration that was previously impossible. Visit blockpool.io for more information. You'll find links to all of our sponsors on our website, 2cyborgs.com. While you're there, make sure to visit our store and get some very cool 2Cyborgs branded gear. Cheers.
Cheers. Clink.
Oh, I guess you guys can't see that if this is on the podcast. So we're thinking virtual mugs. And get your branded gear, sweatshirts, drinkware, and more. So this is Tim Shank, and I'm drinking from one of our stylish branded coffee cups right now.
And this is Brian McAvoy. You've been listening to You've been listening to Two Cyborgs and a Microphone, brought to you by Two Cyborgs with the sexiest mugs.
And this is Tim Shank. Like, follow, share, +1, and don't forget to subscribe to any of our popular Like, follow, share, +1, and don't forget to subscribe on any of our popular podcast services, included. Okay, one more time.
This is the hard passage. Sorry.
I've said this. We've said this a million times, but it's just not
56
easy.
times.
Yeah. Like, follow, share, +1, and don't forget to subscribe on any of the popular podcast services, including Google Play Music, iTunes, and Stitcher. Help us move up the podcast ladder by subscribing and commenting on iTunes.
The comments really help us out. Of course, you know that. And we are also on Twitter at 2Cyborgs. All right, let me see if we have any questions. No questions from YouTube, but I had one for you, Tim.
Yeah.
While I was looking through this fungus stuff, I kept hearing mention of lion's mane. Have you ever looked into that? And
I've never looked at growing it. I think I've taken it as a supplement once or twice, but I don't remember what it was for.
I think it was for cognition, and I think it said that it, one, I heard it was tasty, totally edible, and could incite neurogenesis. Oh. And I listened to this, I'm like, why the heck am I not buying this by the pound? I love mushrooms. I had shiitake mushrooms for breakfast. And here's another tasty mushroom that's supposed to make you smarter. I don't know that I'd grow it myself because that's a whole lot of stuff going on, but why am I not knowing more about this?
I don't remember anything about why I tried it or what my results were. I know I have tried it. Probably not as an edible. I probably had it in a capsule or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was usually the way most people do it. But I mean, hey, a tasty mushroom is, I'll put that on everything.
Well, hey, let's get some.
Seems like a plan.
Absolutely. I'm all up for it. All right. So I guess that's it. Brian, I said this is Tim Shank twice. Just ignore that second one. It's
I heard that.
A bunch of stuff, so we don't need it.
Doesn't matter. All right, cool. Well, thank you all for listening on the YouTube, and we will catch you next time. Oh, hey Tim, what do you think about our next book? Because I'd like to do this again. This was fun.
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
I was looking at these. I guess. Well, I have one.
Yeah.
This one. Here's one that I don't think I've listened to this one yet. Because I get these all the time. So, just give me a moment. Now, this one isn't a fiction.
Okay.
It's called Augmented, a book on future history, but more than that, it's a story about how you will live your life in the world that will change that will change more in the next 20 years than it has in 250 years. Are you ready to adapt? Because if history proves anything, you don't have much of a choice. It's called Augmented.
That sounds right up our alley.
It really does.
Let's do that one.
Okay. Yeah, and like I say, I don't think this one's fiction, but it's a 12-hour book. It's on Audible, so
sweet.
All right, that's next on my list then too.
Next on our list is Augmented. Who's the author?
The author is Augmented by Andy Lark, Alex Lightman, J.P. Rangaswamy. I think I can't. It's got a appended cut off. So yeah, I don't have all the details on it right now, but that's the book.
Augmented by the characters augmented by the authors Tim said.
Yeah, and
cool.
It's
I'll try to splice that in earlier so that it sounds like it's part of the show.
Okay, cool. Great. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks, Brian.
Bye, Tim.
Bye.